Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. I think just 1 minute in. I hope everybody's well if you're here already. Thanks for joining. We'll give people a little bit of time, Emma, to join. This is our chance just to mumble and ramble on a little bit, which is what most of my podcasts start with. But yeah, it's a nice way to start the podcast. So imagine it probably sounds really weird on a Spotify when you can't actually see us and you're not here live. But hey ho, it's the joys of real life. And I don't have the time to do any editing, so it just goes up as it is.
You need to slow the fuck down, mate.
Yeah, probably. Or hire a VA or somebody to do my marketing and editing for me.
Yeah.
I know that's
time is an interesting thing. I'm doing a conference soon. Actually, it's all about the concept of time, our relationship with time.
Go on. Can you give us a little bit of a preview?
Well, it's about how time in our imaginations is a different thing to reality. Our unconscious minds don't know time. They don't know if it's now, if it's the present, future, or past. So you can play with that to your advantage. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit today.
Yeah, wicked. I'm excited for that because the concept of time as a coach and a personal trainer in kind of my past and present has been one of the biggest barriers and excuses people use to get more exercise in. And so yeah, it'd be interesting.
Totally, it's a choice, isn't it?
Yeah, the way you value that your health, I guess.
I don't have time to look after me. Yeah. Sorry.
No, definitely. We'll get started. If you are here watching, listening to Emma, then please say hi. Put in the comments, say hi. If you have any questions, also put them in the comments because I will ask those or we'll answer those as we go along. But yeah, I'm really excited to have Emma here today. I remember listening to Emma for the first time at This Can Happen. Was it? I think it was last year. No, maybe the year before.
No, it was last year. Don't tell me it was the year before. It was last year, I'm sure.
Yeah. If so, that time thing we were talking about has gone very quickly.
Right.
But yeah, I wanted to get Emma on because she has a really great story. I'd say great story, but a powerful story and I was like, okay, well, I want to get her to share this and for others to learn from, really, going through burnout and experiencing how to manage that and slow the fuck down is something which I think a lot of people and leaders can learn from. So I'll stop kind of the mumbling along. I'll do a quick introduction to myself and then I'll pass the ball over to Emma to introduce her. So if you don't know who I am, my name's Rich. I'm the founder of Employees Health, which is a workplace wellbeing company. My main role there is a high performance coach, helping people, senior leaders, succeed both personally and professionally in whatever they're trying to achieve. We've got a few different kind of packages with regards to team progression, leadership coaching, and lots of other things. So if you want to learn more about that, just drop me a line. We can have a conversation. So that's that bit kind of done. The more important bit is, Emma, rather than me butcher your introduction like I've just done to myself, can you do your introduction and tell people who you are, what you do?
My name is Emma Harris. I run a business called Glow London. We help businesses transform. We sort of brand-led change is how we say it. Mm-hmm. So we're sort of our backgrounds. We're all former clients. So we all work sort of brand side within clients, and now we help other businesses primarily work out who they are, how to communicate, how to align their culture, and how to drive proper change that drives growth. I started out many years ago in FMCG selling beer, which many of people who know me will be unsurprised. I started out in that world, in alcohol, and then spent 10 wonderful years at Eurostar, leading sales and marketing and transforming the business commercially through a brand refresh, through many crises of getting trains stuck in tunnels, launched social media, launched digital, learn everything I think there is to learn in every corner of marketing in my 10 years there. And then jumped out. And my big thing was that you can, with social media, you can no longer say one thing and do another. And actually most people that work on brands sort of stop at what I call the colouring in. And I was always, when I was doing a bit of consultancy work, going, but how are we going to bring this to life?
Mm.
My big thing at Eurostar was you can do beautiful ads, but if you walk into St Pancras and meet someone with a face like a slapped arse, you kind of ruined your advertising. So that's what we do. We connect it all. So we do a lot of work with culture, and obviously there's always a wellbeing element to that. I also have 4 children, ranging from 23 down to 7. So I always say we have what I call sex, drugs, and nursery rhymes in the same house. It's a 24-hour operation. My husband is an actor, so we have quite an interesting lifestyle, as you can imagine. It's a bit kind of, it's feast or famine. He's either away working, or he's doing theatre 6 nights a week, or he's climbing the walls wanting to work. So yes, there's a lot going on. I'm a trustee of a foundation, a charity called the Marketing Academy Foundation, which helps young people get jobs in marketing from challenging backgrounds. I also advise a business called Collage Voices, which helps young people find their way through the arts. I'm on the PTA of my son's primary school. Quite a busy life. That's me.
Yeah, they sound super busy. And being an entrepreneur whilst doing all those things as an entrepreneur and a businesswoman, then to manage 4 kids, one of which is 7 years old, and a husband which, like yourself, probably is very busy, self-employed human being. It's probably, that time aspect and the managing workload is probably a real challenge.
It definitely is. Oh, there's a dog as well. I don't know if you can see her behind me.
Oh, yeah.
She's had an operation yesterday. She's feeling very sorry for herself. Yes, it's a constant battle, and one which I have many lessons to share about how to manage, and I don't always get it right.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well, isn't it? And I think we'll get into that. I wanted just to quickly touch on the culture piece, which I found really interesting when we kind of had an initial conversation about how you look at building a brand around the company, and actually the importance of the culture within that company to manage to support the brand. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more for me?
Well, the brand is your people. The brand, particularly if you're in a service business where people touch you, every moment your brand is not, it's your DNA. It's not just what we call like the pretty wrapping paper. And nowadays, if you're attracted by the pretty wrapping paper, if a brand has a message and a promise that delivers, that thinks you're going to get something, and the minute you touch it, it disappears, you won't create that customer retention, customer loyalty. And if someone has one bad experience, it used to be they'll tell 10 people, now they'll tell millions. So you can no longer afford, like I said, to do one thing and say another. So whereas brands in the days of Mad Men, you could sort of get away with, even actually, I would say back to sort of 2008-9, you could sort of get away with owning your message as a brand owner. Now your brand lives amongst your customers, lives amongst your people. So aligning them and if your brand, which primarily is the thing that makes you better than your competition, it's the thing that makes you special. If it has to be amplified to every touch point, and often that's your people. And it has to be absolutely the reason people join your business. Everyone has to know how to show up and deliver on that promise every day. I always talk about, for me, it's not just galvanizing marketing and obviously HR, and our favorite meetings is when you've got both of them in the room, but it's things like finance. If your brand is about being a champion of the people, yet you then, pay people in 90 days, then you're not delivering on your brand. So you've got to make sure everyone in finance understands. Yes, you might have a KPI around debtor days, but you've got to be able to communicate and engage with people. You are part of the brand in that experience. So it's got to be absolutely right into the bloodline of the business.
Yeah, it's complete. Yeah, I think the term culture you use there is very much around the organizational kind of setup, more so than just the culture of the people as well, right? It's how the organization is set up and run, which then impacts the culture as well, right?
Yeah, they're kind of one and the same. It's the lived experience of the people. So, we talk about mapping people experience as you would customer experience. Most businesses put so much energy and effort into what that customer experience looks like and making sure it's fabulous.
Mhm.
And if they shone that internally and made sure every moment from when you first touch a brand, applying for a job, and then the recruitment process, often that can be horrendous and
Mm.
really damaging. You
Mhm.
know, making sure that recruitment process is rich with that brand promise. And if, you know, often there's a bit which is tumbleweed from when you accept a job to you start, and what we call yes to desk, and making sure that is filled with brand experience and connectivity, so
Mm.
that the first day someone shows up, they feel seen and belonging and valued, and they know how to, what the expectation is of them
Mhm.
to show up and deliver. It's this two-way street.
Mm.
And I think that often businesses forget it's a two-way street. They put so much energy into the customer because that's in their head where the money comes from.
Mhm.
And, you know, they don't realize actually, you know, it's all about the people, stupid. And I think the organizations that get that right and realize the value of the most valuable resource they have, often thrive. And
Yeah.
that's what we help businesses do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's so true as well, right? And I think some companies do it really well, some companies don't. Um, it's a topic we're going to touch on a little bit later down the line when we look at kind of the organization, creating great organizations. But I want to dive into that story of yours a little bit more. You've obviously had a fantastic kind of experience and kind of career so far. But at one point, it did hit a bit of a head, right? And so it'd be nice to hear your kind of story of burnout and the health challenges and how that kind of changed your life as well.
Yeah, I mean, I described my life to you at the beginning as a busy one. Going back to 2022, add to that, I was also on the exec team of a global social media business. So it was almost like sort of running two businesses. I was in New York having brunch. I'd had a week of board meetings, and the week before that, I'd been in Chicago with a client, WPP. And I stood up to go to the loo. It was the day we were leaving, and collapsed and had a cardiac arrest.
Mm.
No pre-existing conditions, no warning. Absolutely, I've been at a party the night before. Apparently, I'd said I was tired a lot. That's all.
Mhm.
And when I stood up, I said I feel dizzy. But you know, honestly, no sign. I have a very healthy heart.
Mhm.
I'm somebody who likes a drink, but I've always really taken my health seriously. That week,
Mhm.
I'd done 2 runs in the morning because I knew I was kind of having big dinners and drinking a lot.
Mhm.
In fact, that morning I'd done a HIIT class in my hotel room. So this is not the story of someone who's unhealthy who was
Mhm.
heading for a cardiac arrest. It was absolutely out of the blue.
Mhm.
I was very lucky. Most people that have a cardiac arrest outside of hospital, because it's not a heart attack, it's arrest, it's stop,
Mhm.
don't survive. I was so lucky. I mean, lucky isn't even the word. Clearly, I've got some big angels up there, because there were 3 doctors having
Mm.
brunch in the same restaurant, and they stood up, came over and helped and gave me CPR and saved my life. My
Mm.
heart stopped again in the ambulance, which had came in 7 minutes, again unheard of in Manhattan.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, they defibbed me and got my heart back. So I am one of, you know, it's 10 in 100 people that survive it, and of the 10 that survive it, only 4 come out without brain damage. So I'm like 4 in
Mm.
100 of coming out of it unscathed. And as I tell the story, it's almost like it didn't happen to me. That I had an
Such
op on my, sorry.
it is such a crazy story, isn't it? And such luck, as you said, the gods were definitely looking down on you that day.
Yeah, I'd wanted to go to a different restaurant. And anyone that knows me knows I'm not good at not getting my own way. And I was a bit grumpy about it because I wanted to go on a rooftop. But one of the team wanted to get a tattoo done. And they said, no, we need to go to this place because it's near the tattoo parlor. So thank God she did. I love that tattoo. It probably saved my life. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, you never know. There might have been a doctor in the other restaurant, but you know, what are the odds? And you know, I just, yeah, it really changed my perspective when I woke up in ICU. And obviously for a while I didn't know, I couldn't really get my head around what happened. My only thought was, what the fuck have I been doing? And I, you know, there's no one thing they can point to say this is why it happened. The cardiologist says it's like a glitch. Like sometimes for no reason your internet cuts out,
Mhm.
sometimes for no reason your laptop shuts down. It's a bit like that, which doesn't give us much help. But it, you know, stress cardiomyopathy So likely to 4 long haul flights and worrying about the kids. Instead of going straight from Chicago to New York, I'd flown home because of the kids, because Danny was filming in Barcelona and I was worried about what was going on at home, which is just mad because it's all in my head. The kids were so much happier without me because grandma lets them on their devices all the time. So yeah, I mean, I woke up and husband was like, what the fuck have I been doing? But just really, really, of course, a brush like that with death gives you a completely different view on life. And it just made me think, what have I been doing? I've been running around, giving everyone else priority apart from myself. And things have got to change. So yeah, that was a real moment.
So what changed then at that point for you?
I think realizing the madness that I'd been running on, sort of the engine I'd been running on was the wrong engine. So the engine I'd been running on was this quest for success that I'd had since a kid. And, I burned my way through Eurostar. Sort of every year, 18 months, I'd be like, can I have something else? I sort of grew my way up from business sales to UK sales to global sales. Then I did the change management. We moved to Waterloo to Pancras. Then I was like, right, give me marketing, give me this. Right, I'm bored now. I've done that. Give me something else. And in your head, it's like, when I get that job, I'll be happy. When I get that salary, I'll be happy. When I have a director title, oh, now I need a C title. Oh, and then running my own business. Oh, my turnover trebled from year 1 to 2, and then trebled again from year 2 to 3. And if it didn't treble, there was like, I'll be happy when it's this big. I'll be happy in this house. I'll be happy. And it just made me realize I put my happiness in front of me all my life, when I'm thin enough, when, I don't know, whatever it is, this sort of external validation of status that we chase is bullshit. And actually, when you think you're not going to make it, it's the only thing you think about is your kids and your family and your friends and love, And so, I haven't given it all up. I'm not, a monk living in the middle of a forest, but and it's about, I've been talking for a long time. So we are part of a group called Planet K2, who are human performance experts. And I've been very buried in human performance. I'm an NLP practitioner. I've done huge amounts of coaching. I'm a mentor for the Marketing Academy and have been for about 10 years. So I do these big speeches and have done for a long time about the potential of you and the power of you and understanding your unconscious mind. And it just made me realize I've been walking, the wrong walk. I've been telling everyone else about how to live their lives and not doing it myself. And I think that was the thing. It's like, right, I know how to live differently. I know that a lot of the decisions I'm making are based on fear, the catastrophization, the stories we tell ourselves, FOMO, some sense. If I don't go to that meeting, if I'm not in that bar till the door shuts, if I'm not here, there, and everywhere, the world's going to end. Guilt, I've got to fly home because my kids need me. All just realized the engine that was running was a madness, putting everyone else's thoughts in my head, putting everyone's needs before my own, putting this quest for success, whatever the fuck that means. And it was just saying, stop the engine and going, right. And it's not, I am still me. I'm still doing a lot of things. Yet every day, I'm very mindful of the choices I'm making, the things I say yes to, the responses I have, the way I look after my mental and my physical well-being. I allow myself to prioritize me, and it's not easy. And yet every day I'm checking in with myself. Why am I doing that? And sometimes I get it wrong, and then I go, okay, well, next time we'll do better. But that's the big difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to dive into that. I'm just going to start with, I think it's that, I guess the life you lived beforehand, even the life you live now, I guess, is a life that a lot of people strive for. I think that term success means different things for different people, and the life that looks like when you were talking about all the traveling, all the great excitement stuff you were doing, to me, I'm like, that sounds fantastic, because that's the kind of thing I'm looking to do. But then obviously, as you said, being able to manage them, reflect, and kind of slow the fuck down and kind of put priorities in order I guess is probably a way you're looking at it. It's a really tough thing when you consider success in that
In those
evaluation of what you,
terms.
those terms.
Yeah.
What practical tips have you got for someone like myself? Because I'm probably striving for some of that success and some of that lifestyle, because you see it. I guess the comparative, or comparing yourself to others, makes you want that a little bit more. But how do you, what practical tips have you got that you maybe implemented to help people from still kind of striving? Because I think we all like to strive somewhere and strive for success and a bit of a lifestyle, but make sure that you are still reflecting on yourself and being really positive in what performance looks like as well.
I think the important thing, first of all, to remember is you never get there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying to me, oh, that lifestyle sounds amazing. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm striving for. But when you're in it, that's what I mean. When I've got a director now, I want to be a C-suite. I've got this turnover now, I want that turnover. It's recognizing that you put your happiness in front of you,
mm-hmm.
and you're constantly chasing it. Because to a lot of people, your life, you're running your own thing. You're making choices every day. I know it's tough,
Mm-hmm.
and you're on a quest. So I say to my kids, particularly my elder ones, that actually the quest is to be able to wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and go, I'm okay. I like you. I accept me for who I am, wherever I am. And I've got so many things to be grateful. Look, at the end of the day, we all flick a switch and we've got electricity. We turn a tap, we got water. We open a fridge and there's food. Even on those bases, it's all relative.
Yeah.
And that thing of putting that success, what is success, is a really interesting question. So I would say, first of all, check with yourself. Remember, whenever you get there, the more you earn, the bigger mortgage you have, the more you need to earn, the bigger mortgage you have, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So actually focusing on being grateful for where you are right now is a really good thing. And then the second thing is a big headline. When I do my keynote, the first headline is work out what actually matters and prioritize it. And I show these two word clouds. And the first one's got work in the middle, and then money, status, cars, houses, validation, health, beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my word cloud before I had my cardiac arrest. And that was where I was prioritizing. And in doing that, I was actually missing out on the thing that really is important, because the amount of bedtimes and bath times, I was always the mum that never made the assembly, couldn't go on the school trips. What's the point? What am I doing it for? Because unconsciously, I am actually doing it for the kids, because the decisions we make often, in order to protect the thing that actually matters, we're prioritizing the thing that doesn't matter. So let me give you an example. Somebody I know who I was doing some mentoring with wouldn't go for a walk without her phone. Very, very senior, very well-established woman. And I was like, you're really stressed out. Take 30 minutes, leave your phone at home, go for a walk. She wouldn't do it. So I tried to get her to unpick what it was that was stopping her from doing it. And eventually, because this is the thing, that the unconscious mind is doing all the work, and we're not even really aware of what's happening in the unconscious mind. We're just responding to the feeling. And she was responding to this fear about leaving her phone. So when I got her to really look into the unconscious mind and to say what was happening, she eventually, I got her to admit, it was, if I don't answer the phone and someone important calls, they'll think I'm flaky. They'll tell other people I'm flaky. My reputation will get damaged. Let me tell you, this woman had been 25 years in this company. Her reputation's unstoppable. My reputation will get damaged. I'll lose my job. I'll lose my house. And me and my family will die on the streets. Now, that took me about half an hour to get that out of her, because it's never a conscious thought. And 95% of our behavior is unconscious. And that's one of the things I ask people to do, which is listen to the story, listen to the thought and the feeling and what's behind it, and make decisions based on evidence, not thoughts and feelings. So often the stories we tell ourselves, because this I'm not good enough thing that often comes from a teacher or a friend or a parent, this I'm not good enough. So you're running and running and running to try and prove to the world you're good enough, really the only person you need to prove it to is yourself.
Yeah.
So that's that sort of stopping and thinking, why am I doing this? Let's really check in and take it out of the thoughts and feelings, which your thoughts and feelings don't exist. Now, I'm not negating the struggles we have in mental health when I say that. What I'm saying is your thoughts and feelings aren't tangible. You can change them. In the middle of the night, when that 4 a.m, fear takes over, oh, everything's going to go to shit and I'm rubbish and, negative ninny, you can just go, actually, I don't want to think about this now. I'm going to think about something else. And recognizing the minute you go, that's just a thought. It's like putting a pin in a balloon, and the stress can remove. You can just think, right, I'm going to think about the goal that someone scored yesterday, or I'm going to plan my birthday party, or whatever it is. You can choose your thoughts, and that gives people a lot of freedom. So there are a lot of practical things that we can do to recognize why we're doing things.
100%. The stories conversation is a really interesting piece, isn't it? Because it is, our narrator will tell us the most ridiculous story in many different circumstances, and I think obviously everybody has it. But the story around how you left the conversation, how polite you were to somebody, or is that person going to like me? And actually, it's just a story. It's just your narrator going, did you do that good enough? But then when you can begin to go, or challenge him, the narrator, and challenge the thought and go, why that? Or why am I thinking that? Wherever it might be, you can challenge that narrator or that thought, and then you begin to go, it's just a thought. It's such a stupid story I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
And actually, I can move on from that. It takes a little. Sometimes it can be more challenging than others, especially if you're a people pleaser like me, or like people pleaser in general, or wherever that story might be. It can be a challenging process, but you can challenge it, and actually, by challenging it, you get a better outcome, and you can begin to do that.
Yeah. Two things on what you just said. So first of all, a really great practical exercise. So you've mentioned a couple of your voices. One is the narrator and one is your people pleaser. So it's not necessarily I am a people pleaser. You have a voice in your head, which is a people pleaser. And the really great exercise is to just spend some time thinking about what all those different voices are. You've got the narrator, or I would say the critical voice. Going, why did you say that? You weren't polite enough. They probably think, that voice. I mean, I call it negative ninny. I mean, to be honest, it's my Jewish mother, but it's constant nagging. You fucked up again. You absolute idiot. And you know what? My mother loved me. So even though she had a very critical voice, that she loved me, and that voice loves me too. Now, all those voices have a positive intention for you. So listening to what they all are and connecting with their positive intention removes the fear of hearing them. And when you identify them all, I've got risk manager who's got glasses and a clipboard running around telling everyone's about to die. I've got people pleaser. She wants to do everything for everyone. I've got party girl who never wants to leave a bar. I've got kick ass who gets shit done. There's so many, just getting to know them all, giving them labels and knowing where you want to pass the mic to. So actually, I'm going to take the mic off my narrator now because he's not really helping me at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to give it to my cheerleader or my nurturer. It's a really, really great exercise. You don't have to be afraid of the thought and you can control it. And the second thing, you were talking about, have I lost my thought? You were talking about the stories. I'll come to me in a minute. Oh, yes, Jay Shetty. So you were talking about, I said that to him, and I bet they think that. We all have an ego bias. So we naturally are coming into the world thinking about ourselves. And we assume that other people are thinking about us as much as we're thinking about ourselves. And a really great quote, I don't know if you've read any Jay Shetty or listened to his podcast. Oh, he's brilliant. He wrote a book called Think Like a Monk. He lived as a monk for 3 years. He's a North London guy that went to live like a monk 3 years to sort of get away from the pressures of his parental pressure to grow up and be a doctor or an accountant. Anyway, he talks about, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what you think I am what I think you think I am. So not only do our own thoughts and feelings not exist, we're imagining the thoughts of other people that don't exist.
Yeah.
And there's two things to say there. Number one, they're not actually thinking anything. They're walking away probably worrying about what they said to you or what they're going to have for dinner.
Yeah.
And we spend so much time. There's a thing called FUPO, fear of other people's opinions. And again, it's part of that decision making, the thoughts and feelings we create. If I don't go to that birthday party, I'm going to ruin her party. Listen, there's 100 people going to the party. If you don't go, she's still going to have a great time. We naturally overinflate our sense of importance in other people's lives. And removing that from our vernacular is really useful because it just reminds you, oh, yes, it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the two things I wanted to say about that.
Oh, I love that. That FUPO, I just had to write that down.
Yeah, write it down. It's like the new FOMO.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. The other thing I was going to add about it, or when you said about kind of reflection piece, was I always work with clients, and one of the first things I do is ask them what they want to achieve. What does success look like? And then we begin to create this North Star. And so we look at 10 years' time, or when you get to your kind of deathbed, how would you want life to have looked? Okay, and so what does that look like in 10 years? What's that journey? By creating that vision, helps people check in with themselves more often. And so from that vision, you can begin to create kind of small actions. You can create that's your long-term big dream goal, bit of a longer term, 3 year, 1 year, 90 days, and then just keeps you on track and helps reflect on the success you are having rather than the successful outlook you think and the story you think you're creating. By actually having something which is more meaningful. And that dream goal has got to include not just work and life, it's got to include hobbies, friends, socials, all that kind of stuff. I think it builds a picture of what you want life to look like. Then from there, you can manage success in a much better way.
I think that's really important. I would even take that further at the risk of coaching a coach. I would say the reason why that's really important is because going back to that 95% of our behavior is unconscious. What you're doing in going to that vision is you're telling the unconscious mind, which is doing all the work, where to go. So I always say, imagine your unconscious mind is a massive horse and your conscious mind is this tiny jockey hanging onto the mane. And actually, by doing that vision, you're just saying to the horse, go. It's a really great way to reduce stress. Yeah. So when you're going into a situation, rather than worrying about what am I going to say, what am I going to do? Oh my God, how's it going to go? Just go to the end point. So the unconscious mind doesn't know time. So again, as I said before, you can convince yourself that it's already happened. That's what you're doing. This is what athletes do. You know, Sally Gunnell, you're probably too young to remember Sally Gunnell. She was a double gold medal winning athlete. If you look it up, she always talks about the power of visualization. Most athletes will tell you they're all as fast as each other. And the difference between gold and fourth, which is usually tiny, is up here. And when she first won her gold medal, she didn't know whether it was actually happening or whether she was having another visualization, because she'd visualized it so specifically, what she was going to feel and where she was going to look and what she was going to think and what she was going to hear, that she wasn't even sure it was happening. And yet we don't use the power of that visualization. And a really great exercise is to do that every year. So in January, go to the following January. And the most important thing is to do it in the present tense. So take a snapshot of your life in that future. Go to the day and describe it in the present tense. When you say, I want this to happen, or I will do that, unconsciously, you're putting it in front of you. When it's already happened, there's a neurological shift that happens that your unconscious mind thinks it already has. And then you can relax. And I make people do a whole day from getting up in the morning, what they're doing, and covering health, finance, relationship, work, and did I say home? So all the things in your house, like I've got a new sofa, or all those things that are like drive you mad. I remember one of my outcomes one year was all the bulbs in my bathroom work, which I know sounds bonkers, but it was the sort of thing that made me feel like such a loser every morning going into the loo, and like only 3 bulbs out of 10 were working. So what happens is, once you've set that vision, once you've seen all the bulbs working, like within a couple of weeks, suddenly I'm up a ladder doing it.
Yeah.
And because your horse has seen it happen already. Vision boards are a great one for that as well. My screensaver on my laptop is a vision board. In fact, this house I'm sitting in now that we bought in 2021 was on a vision board in 2017. And it wasn't obviously the exact house, but it was a house so remarkably like this house that it's not magic that we bought this. I mean, it took a long time. My husband being an actor and me running my own business, and it was during COVID. So it took bloody ages to get the mortgage. And Danny kept saying, let it go back on the market. It's not going to happen, because all the mortgage companies were just being a nightmare. And I just went, it's my house. It wasn't a negotiable for me. So it's not magic. Neurologically, you just create the belief.
Yeah. 100%.
We do this with our clients. We call it creating future memories. We do it with our leadership teams, because when you're in a position when the business is here and needs to get there, it can feel very overwhelming. And often the work we do with culturally, people are so overwhelmed trying to run the day-to-day, especially at the moment, because it's tough to stop and go, right, what's that future look like? And you go into it, suddenly they're able to get out of the day-to-day. It's an amazing shift. Really powerful. So yeah, it's that future vision thing's so important.
Yeah, I love that. one of my top strengths is futuristic, and so I love the picture of future. But being able to refer that into the present day and make it a thing now is a really powerful thing, which I'm going to try and consider doing a bit more. I'm going to move into kind of the organizational standpoint now, and ask a couple of questions around kind of what makes a great organization, and that's going to be my lead question. So, what makes a great organization?
Well, it's a very big, many things, but obviously, in terms of stuff we talked about before, for me, it's all about the people. It's your greatest resource. It's your greatest asset. I remember years ago bringing in the ops director from John Lewis to meet with the Eurostar board. And he just spent an hour talking to them about how they see their team as just so much. They're the number one thing is the people, and how everything they do is positioned around keeping their partners happy more than customers. And a long time ago they realized keep the people happy and the customers follow. It's the same thing with Dishoom. I don't know if you've heard of Dishoom. That's exactly, they had this massive shift when the owner of Dishoom realized everything they were doing was sort of focusing on cutting costs and trying to create efficiencies and doing a bit of marketing. And actually, once they shifted that to their people and realize, actually, if we have great customer service because our people are really happy, then and look after our people, everything else will follow. Greg's are another one. The CEO at Greg's, Whitaker, he had the same thing. So I'm just letting the dog out. He had the same thing, that the focus they put on their culture and everything else follows. So for me, a great organization is one that's people first, that knows who it is and knows what lane they're fighting in. A lot of businesses, particularly B2B businesses, I think, sort of try and be all things to all people, try and chase the customer. Whereas, as obviously as a brand expert, our thing is know who you are and stay in your lane. When Nike supported Colin Kaepernick and people were burning their Nike saying, we'll never buy from you again, they were like, fine, crack on. We don't actually want your custom. I think having that really sort of clear lens on, this is who we are, this is the lane we're in, and this is how we look after our people. That for me is a great organization. And sadly, it's a rarity in my experience.
Yeah, really is a rarity. What role does Wellbeing play into this for you?
Massive. I mean, this is something, when I stand up and talk about slow the fuck down, particularly with sort of leaders in the business, I can almost hear them think, and again, this is me assuming, but I've heard it, well, we don't want to slow the fuck down, we want to speed the fuck up. And I always say, listen, you have to slow the fuck down to speed the fuck up. And having an environment and a culture where people first means that people feel they are able to look after their mental well-being and their physical well-being, and that the business is encouraging that, they will be more productive. They will be more creative. They will be more productive. Your employee retention will be better. Their performance will be better. I mean, it's such a no-brainer for me that when businesses think, recently, I can't remember what business it was. They were just talking about the results. There was a guy put this post on LinkedIn. I've been here 2 years. Looking back at my performance, I'm really proud we've done this, and this. And it was just a list of numbers of stuff they achieved. And I wrote back, and what sits behind these numbers? Because if you've achieved these numbers and behind it is a team of people who are on their last legs, who feel wrung out, who feel like they've had to, in order to deliver those numbers, who've had to nearly kill themselves, that's not performance. So I think it's a great question. And one that, really slow the fuck down is about doing that. It's about saying, stop being on the hamster wheel, focus what actually matters. And from an organizational point of view, that's what really is going to grow the business, because there's a lot of noise that happens, and there's, we end up getting involved with processes and ops and resourcing. There's so many things that go into that, what really matters. And focusing on that, ensuring that you've got really clear people experience, people engagement, that they're prioritized, and that their mental and physical health, they're able to prioritize that. Otherwise, they will not perform. It's the first question I ask when I do my keynote. I get people to stand up and I ask them 3 questions. And one of them is, the last one actually of the 3 is, and I get them to stay standing if the answer is yes. And the last question, and there's usually by then 1 or 2 people, is, are you able to prioritize your physical and mental well-being? And usually by the end of those 3 questions, everyone's sat down. So it's, everyone needs you, Rich. Everyone needs you.
Shameful plug there. Thank you. No, but yeah, it's an inch. I mean, obviously, well-being for me is the foundation to long-term performance. Because when you've got behaviors, positive well-being behaviors, and there's a lot of those, but putting some key things in for you means that in 20, 30 years' time, that you've performed and succeeded consistently for that period of time. And you have to, I think, and I do a lot of talking around the corporate athlete. When we look at athletes, we compare ourselves to athletes and go, this is what success is. They work hard, but their careers are really short for the most part. Our careers as human beings, if you're not a professional athlete, last from 20, maybe even earlier, all the way through to 60, 65, depending on how old you are, potentially 75 when we get there. So we have to be able to consistently stay fit, healthy, and kind of high performing for that time. And so what does that look like? And so we have to implement that. And that companies have to allow that to happen, support some of this stuff and encourage that and create a culture around it. So yeah, no, I think it's a vital bit, and I like the way, obviously, where you put it as well.
Well, as I mentioned, we're part of a group of companies called Planet K2, and that's what it's all about. We're all about human performance, and well-being is a huge part of it. We have one of the businesses called Believe Perform, which originally was the biggest community of sports people. It was sort of mental well-being for sports people, and now it's expanded more. We work with organizations, work with schools, and offer a lot of sort of content and understanding around this. And it's, what's amazing is I just, them and you, I just feel like everyone has to have a well-being program in their organization, but often it's just such a box ticking exercise. It's, we'll give everyone a duvet day or a founder's day or whatever it is. And it's like, really, what? So you're going to give them a day off work, but if they're already overloaded and can't cope with the workload anyway, how are you really helping that? When we led the move from Waterloo to St Pancras, it was a big cultural shift. And when we started, very few people wanted to move. They didn't really understand why we were moving. There hadn't really been much communication before that as to what the plan was. The customers didn't want us to move because most of them were in the sort of stockbroker belt. Waterloo was suited them. I mean, this is obviously a very UK point of view, but and we had to work really hard to get people on that journey. And one of our principles was every bit of communication we do had to be two-way. You've got to give people the space to speak back and for it to be a sort of two-way communication. I think, with well-being, that's one of the things is you've got to give people the space. And as leaders, it's all about setting, leading by example. I always talk to people about the need to share their struggles and to show others that it's okay to be vulnerable. I mean, Brené Brown talks a lot about the power of vulnerability in leadership. Someone, one of the people in an organization I work with, her mother died and she turned up for work the next day. Now I get that's her coping mechanism, but I was like, oh, for God's sake, what's that? What's that telling the organization? Unconsciously as leaders, we have to be really careful. They're watching everything we do. So you have to be really mindful of how you're setting that pace. And like I said, all too often it's something that's just, ticking boxes.
Unfortunately it is. And it is a full-size, full-scale organizational change that needs to happen for it not just to be a tick box.
Yeah.
Like giving people fruit and yoga and bits like that is a really nice to have, right? Like it's going to help people's health and well-being. If you allow your people to get some fruit and do some yoga and have a half day, let's be honest, it's great. But unless you're changing the work to be more suitable for long-term success, and you're changing the way that people manage, lead, and support themselves, then you're not going to change the actual well-being at work, at that workplace. So there's a lot that goes on or that needs to go on to make that change, not just be a tick box. I think Emma, we're at the 45-minute mark. We're nearly done. I always leave my guest with one final question, and that is, what's your top 3 tips to take away from today?
One is work out what really matters and prioritize it. And that's whether it's as an individual or as an organization, spend some time looking at that and really make some better choices. Number 2 is use that power of visualization. Some call it manifestation, some call it outcome setting in the smallest and the biggest of ways. Don't stress going into it, go to the end point and know you've achieved it. Tell that horse where to go. And the third one would just be, look after yourself, check in with the decisions you're making and think about your mental and your physical. Every day it's a choice. How much water are we drinking? How much sleep are we having? How much exercise are we doing? How much walking are we doing? How much downtime are we having? What are we putting in our bodies in terms of, processed food and refined sugar and all those things? Listen, I'm not a hypocrite. Of course, I drink, I love food. It's just being mindful of those things and seeing that as part of your performance and, putting you first.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more I could say, but just put you first because no one else will.
Yeah, I love that. And I like the check-in piece because I think being able to check in with yourself, especially once you've done your vision setting and your goal setting, being able to then check in with yourself is vitally important, isn't it? Thank you, Emma. I really appreciate you joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did.
Good. The next session for people listening is next week with my friend's first ever 2-people session. I've never done kind of 3
three-way.
A 3-way. But we're looking at, they did a white paper on well-being washing and why well-being isn't working. And so we'll be looking at that, which will be a really interesting topic. But for now, I hope everybody has a lovely week. This will be live on YouTube and Spotify as soon as possible. But for now, thank you, Emma.
Pleasure.
Emma, stay there. Don't just jump off. Everybody else, see you all soon. Bye-bye.